Hollywood had countless underworld movies. Then Goodfellas came along, and after that, every mafia movie had to live in its shadow. That is why, more than 30 years later, it still stands there like a monument that just refuses to grow old. But what matters today is not just the movie itself. What really gives people chills is what happened to the cast in real life. One got arrested over alcohol and controlled substances. One got crushed by a custody battle that dragged on until total exhaustion. One was gone all of a sudden while still way too young, and people still feel that loss even now. So before we go any further, brace yourself. Because the deeper you look into the faces that made this legend, the more you see just how huge the price was that they paid in real life. And do not leave too early, because the last 5 facts in this video will make you never look at Goodfellas the same way again. Number 1, Ray Liotta as Henry Hill. Let us start with Ray Liotta, the face that helped turn Goodfellas into a classic. Born in 1954, he came to the role of Henry Hill at 36, and that part did not just fall into his lap. At the film anniversary at Tribeca, Liotta said it flat out, he chased that role all the way and practically had to beg to get it. Scorsese even banned him from meeting the real Henry Hill before filming because he was afraid the real man would throw the character off. Liotta did not meet Hill until the movie came out at a bowling alley, and the real guy immediately praised him to the sky. After the movie, Ray Liotta got the role that stayed with him for life, but what is impressive is that he never turned into a name trapped in the past. He kept going, kept working steadily, stayed in the business all the way to the end, and even got an Emmy nomination in 2023 for Blackbird after he had passed away. And you may cry when you hear about Ray Liotta's life. He was adopted, and for years he carried anger over being abandoned. Later, when he reunited with his birth family, he slowly softened and started to accept it. Then, in 2007, Liotta hit a rough patch in real life when he was arrested on suspicion of driving while impaired after crashing into 2 parked cars in Pacific Palisades. Nobody was hurt, but it was a deep enough scratch to show that behind that tough image was a man who could slip off the rails too. Ray Liotta died on May 26, 2022 at 67. While he was in the Dominican Republic filming Dangerous Waters. The cause was atherosclerotic heart disease along with pulmonary edema heart failure and respiratory failure. And maybe that is exactly why people feel his loss a little more sharply. He did not go after some long fading decline. He was gone, while the work was still there, while the screen still had room for him. Rest in peace, Ray, a wonderful actor who helped make a wonderful movie but left way too soon. Number 2, Robert De Niro as James Jimmy Conway, and the next name is no less powerful, Robert De Niro. Born in 1943, he was 47 when the movie came out in 1990. By then, De Niro already had 2 Oscars and had long stopped being the kind of actor who needed one big role to hold himself up. According to AFI records, he felt he was already too old to play Henry Hill, so he shifted over to Jimmy Conway. After Goodfellas, De Niro did not fall behind. The way a lot of stars from his era did, he stayed there, kept working, and held on to a kind of weight that very few people can keep after that many decades. But his private life was not peaceful at all. In 2018, his marriage to Grace Hightower fell apart after more than 20 years. Then came the lawsuit with former assistant Graham Chase Robinson, and everything took on a different tone. De Niro went to court and called the claims nonsense. The jury did not find him personally liable, but his company, Canal Productions, was still ordered to pay more than $1.26 million for gender discrimination and retaliation. For a man famous for keeping tight control over his image, that was no light hit. In 2023, his 19-year-old grandson, Leandro De Niro Rodriguez, died from an overdose involving several substances, including fentanyl, ketamine, and cocaine. De Niro said he was left in shock and kept wondering whether there was something different he could have done. That same year at 79, he welcomed his 7th child. This year, he is 82, still working, still strong enough to stand at Cannes and receive the honorary Palme d'Or. and still a name that American cinema cannot fully describe with just the word legend. Number 3, Joe Pesci as Tommy DeVito. Now, let us get to Joe Pesci, the man who created one of the scariest roles in Goodfellas, then almost turned his back on all of Hollywood while he was still at the top. Pesci was born in 1943 in Newark, New Jersey. When the movie came out in 1990, he was 47, and Tommy DeVito did not just make audiences remember him forever, it also won him the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, off-screen. Joe Pesci is so private, he almost completely pulled himself away from the kind of noise Hollywood loves. His most publicly known marriage was with Claudia Harrow from 1988 to 1992, and they had one daughter. After that, what people remembered about Pesci was not some chain of romantic scandals or shocking public comments. What stuck to his name more than anything was the way he slowly disappeared from the spotlight. After Lethal Weapon 4, Pesci chose to step back from acting almost completely. The clearest collision in Joe Pesci's professional life came in 2011. He sued the producers of Gotti, saying he had been promised a major role with a salary of $3 million, had gained about 30 pounds to prepare, and then got pushed down into a smaller role with $1 million instead. That lawsuit dragged Joe Pesci, a man who rarely puts himself out in public, into exactly the kind of mess he always seemed to avoid. 2 years later, the case was settled quietly. It did not destroy his career, but it did show audiences another side of things. Even a guy as tough as Joe Pesci could not dodge classic Hollywood double-crossing. This year, Joe Pesci is 83. He is still a major name, but he lives more quietly than almost everybody else from his generation. Number 4, Lorraine Bracco as Karen Hill. You probably could never forget Lorraine Bracco, the woman who walked out of Goodfellas like an icon, then in real life paid a brutal price for personal heartbreak. Bracco was born in 1954. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, she was 36, and her role as Karen Hill took her straight to an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. What matters is that she did not stop there. After Goodfellas, Bracco built another major milestone with The Sopranos, where she earned 4 Emmy nominations for playing Dr. Jennifer Melfi. So Karen Hill was not some flash of lightning that came and went. It was the first surge of a career strong enough to keep going for years. Lorraine Bracco first had a marriage with Daniel Gerard, then entered an 11-year relationship with Harvey Keitel and had a daughter, Stella, in 1985. That relationship ended in 1993 after Bracco admitted to an affair with Edward James Olmos, whom she married the next year and divorced in 2002. But the real pain came after that. The custody battle over Stella dragged on for years, and Bracco did get custody, but the price she paid was around $2 million in legal fees. After that, she fell into depression, had to seek professional therapy, and later admitted that she lost 1 whole year of her life to it. This year, Lorraine Bracco is 72. She is still working, still open about love, still enjoys being a grandmother, and has worn her gray hair naturally since 2020, as a way of living more in step with nature. Number 5, Paul Sorvino as Paulie Cicero. Paul Sorvino was already 51 when Goodfellas came out in 1990. He was not the kind of actor who needed this movie to be seen for the first time. His name was already there, but Paulie Cicero became one of the roles audiences remembered him for the longest, right alongside his years on Law & Order. Sorvino was born in 1939 in New York, and when people look back at that road, they do not just see a powerful face on screen, they also see a man who went through quite a few private breakups before reaching old age. He had 3 children from his first marriage to Lorraine Davis, Mira Michael, and Amanda. That marriage ended in 1988. His second marriage to Vanessa Arico also ended in 1996. It was not until 2014 that Sorvino married Dee Dee Benke and entered the last chapter of his life with a 3rd marriage. Looking at that chain alone tells you his off-screen life was not some calm, straight line, even though he stayed clearly close to his children, especially Mira Sorvino. What stayed with Sorvino the longest was not scandal, but asthma. He once dreamed of becoming an opera singer, but his breathing problems forced that dream in a different direction. In 1985, he wrote How to Become a Former Asthmatic, a book about his own experience with the disease and the breathing exercises he used to manage it. Once he got older, the way he reacted when it came to family stayed fierce. In 2007, Sorvino showed up during a confrontation involving Amanda's former boyfriend after his daughter called for help. Police said he had a legal gun with him but did not point it at anybody. Then, in 2018, when the story of Harvey Weinstein harassing Mira Sorvino came back up, Sorvino reacted publicly with real fury in the press. Put those two moments side by side and it tells you pretty clearly what kind of father he was. The older he got, the more obvious that instinct to protect his children became. In the last years of his life, Paul Sorvino's health declined. He died on July 25, 2022 at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, at 83 from natural causes after living with health problems for several years. Number 6. Frank Vincent as Billy Batts. There are some faces that look like they were born to stand inside the gangster world, and Frank Vincent was one of them. He was born in 1937, but what is so good about Frank Vincent is that he did not come into movies by some glamorous Hollywood path. Before he became that familiar cold face from American crime films, he lived in music, loved the drums, played in bands, worked as a studio musician, and only later shifted into acting. He came out of real life, out of nightclubs in New Jersey, out of those years grinding alongside Joe Pesci. The two of them met in music, then did comedy together, then appeared in The Death Collector in 1976, the movie that put them on Martin Scorsese's radar. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, Frank Vincent was about 53, and all it took was a supporting role like Billy Batts to lock his name into the audience's memory. After Goodfellas, Frank Vincent was almost nailed into the gangster image, but honestly, there are actors where being typecast feels like a shame, and then there are actors like him where it became the mark he left behind. Billy Batts did not have much screen time, but it was enough for audiences to remember him for life because of that famous line mocking Tommy. The shadow of that role was so strong that David Chase reportedly hesitated when considering him for The Sopranos before finally casting him as Phil Leotardo, a major role that gave Frank Vincent a whole second life in popular culture. The biggest sadness in his story came at the end. In early September 2017, Frank Vincent had a heart attack, underwent open heart surgery, then died on September 13th at 80. Number 7. Chuck Lowe as Morris Maury Kessler. Chuck Lowe was born in 1928 in New York. His mother died in 1941 when he was still very young. After that, he followed a path that felt very American and very old school. He studied at Norwich Military Academy, earned a degree in electrical engineering in 1950, held the rank of major, served 4 years on active duty, then stayed connected for more than 30 years to the reserves and the National Guard. When he left the military, he did not jump into acting. He went into the family business, then into real estate, developed housing in Tribeca, and became one of the early people to see the value in old industrial buildings. It was during that stretch that Robert De Niro became his tenant, and that friendship opened the door that brought Chuck Lowe into film. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, Chuck Lowe was about 62. That is not the age people usually think of when they talk about a breakout on screen, but he still pulled it off. Maury Kessler was just a supporting role, a wig salesman who talked too much, got impatient, and was a little over the top, but he was exactly the kind of character audiences never forgot. Chuck Lowe was credited with adding one of Maury's lines himself, and after the movie, people on the street still called him Maury. That is a very strange kind of fame, not loud, not glamorous, but it sticks. After the film, he kept showing up in a few projects connected to De Niro, then appeared in The Sopranos and 100 Center Street. He never became a giant star, but he had something a lot of more famous people never get: a very specific place in the memory of American film. Chuck Lowe's private life was not the kind of file packed with scandal, and honestly, that is part of what makes him more memorable. His life was the story of a man who built before he performed. He built a military life, built a career, built homes, built part of Tribeca, and then entered movies very late. Right up to the end, his family remembered him as a sharp man, great with mechanics, generous with friends, and always willing to help people through hard times. Chuck Lowe died on September 18, 2017 at a nursing home in New Jersey at 89.
Number 8, Gina Mastrogiacomo as Janice Rossi.
Every time I go back to Goodfellas, Gina Mastrogiacomo always feels to me like an endless heartbreak. Not the kind where you mourn a star who faded out, but the kind where you mourn somebody who did not even get to finish her road before life just cut right across it. Gina was born in 1961 in Great Neck and grew up in Oceanside, Long Island. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, she was about 29, still very young, and Janice Rossi was exactly the kind of supporting role that only lasts a few minutes but still blows up the whole private side of Henry Hill's life. In a movie full of hard-seasoned faces, Gina still managed to make people remember her with an energy that felt real, alive, and dangerous to a marriage that was already split wide open. What really matters is that Goodfellas was not the end point for her. It should have been a real push forward. After that, Gina kept working steadily, showing up in Jungle Fever, The Naked Gun, 2.5, then moving through television with NYPD Blue, Seinfeld, ER, and even The X-Files. When I look at that run of roles, I do not see somebody fading out early in the business. I see a character actress going exactly the right way, not exploding into major stardom yet, but laying down one solid brick after another for a real career. And that is what makes this story hurt more, because she did not disappear after Goodfellas. She really was still moving forward. As for Gina's private life, at least from the public record still around today, it was almost untouched by scandal. There was no giant, ugly controversy big enough to swallow who she was or the work she did. And sometimes that makes the ending even sadder, because what took her down was not Hollywood, not disgrace, but her own body. Gina died on May 2, 2001 in California at just 39 from a bacterial heart infection. To me, that will always be one of the saddest stories in this cast. A face that had just barely become memorable, had just barely shown she could have gone so much farther, then suddenly stopped at an age when a lot of actors have not even entered the best part of their careers yet.
Number 9, Frank Sivero as Frankie Carbone. Frank Sivero was born in 1952 in Sicily, moved to Brooklyn as a child, and came into Goodfellas in 1990 at about 38. What matters is that he did not walk into the movie as a newcomer. Before that, he already had The Godfather Part 2 behind him, so Frankie Carbone felt like the natural next step for an actor who already carried that mafia quality in his face, in the way he stood, and even in the way he stayed quiet in a crowd. After Goodfellas, Frank Sivero never became a major star, but he did get locked very tightly into that kind of role, and this is where his personal life gets really strange. In 2014, he sued Fox, saying the character Louie in The Simpsons had been based on him. He said he had once lived next door to 2 writers from the show, that they watched him while he was shaping his gangster image and then later used it without permission. He also said that whole thing helped get him typecast and cost him work. That same year, he also sued a deli for using his image to promote a sandwich called Frankie Carbone. It sounds odd, but it shows how tightly he held onto that screen identity, almost like he saw it as a piece of his life's property. In the end, the Simpsons case got thrown out, and that ruling stayed in place on appeal in 2018. This year, Frank Sivero is 74, still alive, acting less than he used to, but still showing up for fans through social media and autograph events. Number 10, Tony Darrow as Sonny Buns. Tony Darrow is one of the rare Goodfellas cases where real life sounds even more like a gangster movie than the role he played. He was born in 1938 in Brooklyn, grew up in exactly the kind of street atmosphere that later got written all over his face, his voice, and the way he stood on screen. Before movies, Darrow spent years singing in nightclubs, then only later moved into acting. It was street trash that brought him to Martin Scorsese's attention, and when Goodfellas came out in 1990, he was 52, playing Sonny Buns, the owner of the Bamboo Lounge, a face that is not on screen very long, but feels exactly right for that world. After the movie, Tony Darrow did not break out into major stardom, but he was almost nailed into the mobster image. What makes this section heavy is his private life
In 2011, his real name, Anthony Borges, showed up in federal records when he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit extortion tied to arranging an assault to collect a $5,000 debt in a Gambino loan sharking operation. The result was 2 years of probation, 6 months of home confinement, 250 hours of community service, and a $7,500 fine. For an actor who made his living playing gangsters, that is the kind of stain that is hard to shake, because after that, audiences could not look at him as just a character actor anymore. After all, that he did not disappear. In July 2025, Darrow was still meeting fans in Stamford to promote a new project. This year, he is 88. To me, Tony Darrow is the clearest example of the dark side of American gangster movies. Some people only play the role, and some carry that shadow right out into real life. Number 11. Mike Starr as Frenchie. Mike Starr was born in 1950 in Queens, grew up in Flushing, is the brother of actor Beau Starr, and his life before the screen had that straight-up New York working man feel to it. His mother worked in retail, his father was a meat packer. He got into Hofstra on both a drama scholarship and a football scholarship. Then, before he landed real acting roles, he had to bartend, work as a bouncer, and hang around small stages just to make a living. That is the part of Mike Starr's life I find most important, because he was not shaped like a star. He came up like a working man. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, he was 40. Frenchie was not a big role, but Mike Starr fit that world so perfectly that he himself said he had studied hard-read wise guy, and was even told by somebody who knew the real Frenchie that he was dead right for the part. The problem is that after roles like that, Hollywood almost locked him in place. From Goodfellas to Miller's Crossing, Billy Bathgate, The Bodyguard, then a whole lot of other movies and series, Mike Starr kept getting called for the same family of parts: mobster, cop, henchman, blue-collar tough guy. He admitted that it was a professional trap because people looked at his size and decided for him who he was supposed to be. What is great is that he did not fall apart over that. He never became a superstar, but he kept working steadily for decades, was rarely out of work, and every now and then still managed to swing into comedic or softer parts. This year, Mike Starr is 76, and he is still present with fans. To me, that is the most valuable thing about him. Number 12. Frank DeLeo as Tutty Cicero. Frank DeLeo did not walk into Goodfellas from Hollywood. He walked into it from the power of the record business, from years of slowly climbing through promotion work, and from that very American old-school toughness you got from a hard-headed executive. Born in 1947 in Pittsburgh, DeLeo started out distributing records, then moved through CBS RCA Monument, and finally became an executive at Epic Records. There he was tied to campaigns for Ozzy Osbourne, Gloria Estefan, Cyndi Lauper, and most of all, Michael Jackson. After the earthquake of Thriller, Jackson pulled him in to be his manager. DeLeo helped push major tours, negotiated a $10 million Pepsi deal, and turned himself into a major piece of Jackson's biggest explosion years. When Goodfellas came out in 1990, he was 43, playing Tutty Cicero with exactly the kind of presence he already had in real life. Heavy, practical, and the kind of man who only had to stand there for people to get cautious. Frank DeLeo was never really a pure actor. He was a manager, a deal maker, a backstage guy with a face that looked made for movie mafia worlds. The Guardian even painted him as an old-school record boss, short and heavy-set always, with a cigar, a ponytail, and rings on both pinkies. And it was also because Scorsese had directed Jackson's Bad Video that DeLeo got his turn into Goodfellas, then later Wayne's World too. But his life is remembered less for movies than for that wild road through music and for his strangely fierce loyalty to Jackson. In 2005, he was there every day in Jackson's trial. In 2009, when he came back as manager, he was once again one of the people standing closest before everything collapsed for the last time. And the end of his life is the heaviest part. In March 2011, Frank DeLeo had to undergo heart surgery at Cedars-Sinai after a heart attack, and his health never really came back. He died on August 24, 2011 at a care facility near Youngstown, Ohio, from complications after heart surgery at 63. Number 13, Christopher Serrone as Young Henry. Some roles put you in the spotlight very early, then make you live under that shadow for a very long time. Christopher Sorvino is one of those cases. He was born in 1976 in Queens, New York, and when Goodfellas came out in 1990, he was about 13. At that age, a lot of kids do not even know who they are yet, and Sorvino had already become the young version of Henry Hill in one of the biggest gangster films in America. That is an incredibly strong start, but it is also the kind of label that is hard to peel off. Playing in Goodfellas did not make people respect him more in Queens. It actually did the opposite. He said that after the movie From School to the Neighborhood, a lot of people were just looking for a reason to fight him. Sorvino said that by the time he was 18, he had already been in at least a few hundred fights, and his mother worried every time he went out at night. That is a very bitter kind of consequence of child fame, especially when the role is tied to a gangster world that boys on the street always want to test themselves against. Then Hollywood did not exactly throw the doors open either. Sorvino had a hard time landing new roles, even though he had been considered for Scent of a Woman, Newsies, and A Bronx Tale. After that came a long, quiet stretch before he returned with Pathfinders, then a few more projects after that. This year he is 50 and he still shows up at conventions and meets Goodfellas fans. To me, to close out this list, Christopher Sorvino is a very real reminder that sometimes the best role you get when you are young is not a door that opens your whole life. It is something you have to learn how to carry your whole life. Now, we have gone through all 13 faces from Goodfellas, and if you are still here with me, then this is the best reward I can give you: 5 little behind-the-scenes stories that show just how obsessively detailed this movie was made. First is Joe Pesci. According to Henry Hill himself, the man whose life became the basis for Wise Guy and the movie Pesci's transformation into Tommy was almost frighteningly accurate, about 90 to 99%. The biggest difference was that the real-life Tommy DeSimone was much bigger and bulkier than the small, explosive guy Pesci brought to the screen. Then there is Robert De Niro being exactly as exacting as you would expect De Niro to be. When they shot the scene where Jimmy is handing out money, he did not want to hold fake cash because it did not feel real. Prop master Robert Griffin had to hand him about $5,000 in real money, and after every cut, the whole set pretty much had to freeze until the money got gathered back up and counted. Nicholas Pileggi told an even crazier story. To make the crowd scenes smell right, really feel like the street and the mafia, the production used some background people who supposedly had real connections to that world. The problem was, they gave Warner Brothers fake social security numbers, so to this day, nobody really knows how those people actually got paid. With Ray Liotta, Martin Scorsese did something that sounds backwards, but was actually smart. He did not want Liotta meeting Henry Hill before filming because he wanted him to find his own Henry first and not let the real man throw off his rhythm. And the last fact is the saddest one. While the movie was shooting, Ray Liotta's mother was dying of cancer. Liotta later admitted that he poured that anger and pain into some of Henry's most intense scenes. So there are moments in Goodfellas that are not just acting. That is real pain. Back in the 90s, men like us lived with 2 things that never got old: sports and underworld movies on the screen. And if I had to pick one movie standing tall in the middle of that memory for me, Goodfellas is always the name you cannot skip. It has swagger, power, brotherhood, betrayal, and that very specific rhythm from a time when American movies knew how to make men sit still in front of a screen and forget everything around them. Time just keeps moving. We get older. The cast from back then got older too, and a lot of them are gone from this world now. But the strange thing is, the movie is still right there. It did not age. It did not get weaker. It is still sharp, still vicious, still alive like it was on day one. So if this movie ever meant something to you, leave the line you love most, the scene you remember most, or even just a very personal memory tied to the first time you saw it. That is how classic movies keep living forever. I will read all your comments, and I believe down there you are going to find people who get you. For now, goodbye, and I will see you in the next video.